haven't done a video like this in a while, but it's going to be a fun one because I'm always giving book recommendations, but I feel like I'll give a recommendation and someone will fall in love with the book, and often someone will be like, oh my god, I love this book so much, can you please recommend something similar? So in this video, I'm going to be recommending popular book talk books and underrated book talk books, and giving you guys just two different options as to what you want to pick out, and all the options will be something that's super similar to the popular book talk book. So I thought this would be fun, and if you guys like videos like this, make sure you guys subscribe because there's new videos every Tuesday and every Saturday. So yeah, let's get into this video, and I will start with the first book on this stack. I think I'm gonna go through 11 or 12 books, but the first popular book talk book that I want to share is Archer's Voice. This is a book that I feel like took the entire world by storm. So many people became obsessed with this story, and I think it's because it gives small town vibes. It also kind of feels like not a soap opera, but like kind of, you know what I mean? Like it's something that will make you in your feelings. It feels just very, very heavy, very emotional, very heartfelt, and so many people I think enjoy this book because not only is it all of those things, but it's also really easy to read. And it's about this guy named Archer who has not spoken to really anyone like ever, and this girl, she's kind of running from something, and she ends up going to this town and meeting him, and no one likes to talk to him, like no one likes to be around him or anything at all. So she kind of tries to figure out like what's going on with him while still trying to get away from what she's running from. And the reason that this book makes me think of this unpopular book is because in The Silent Waters by Brittany Cherry, it is also about a girl who does not speak, very similar to Archer. It's also very heartfelt and emotional because she is best friends with this guy. He's been best friends with her forever, but whenever she stops speaking, he's someone who's kind of trying to figure out like, why is this happening? And he's really there for her. And it's just a really, really good story. So if you enjoyed this, I think you'll also enjoy this. This is also set in a small town, and it gives those small town, cozy, like heartfelt romance vibes that I feel like Archer's Voice just does so well. So definitely read The Silent Waters by Brittany Cherry. All of her books, for the most part, I think are set in a small town, and they give that like melodramatic, kind of soap opera-y type of vibe. And another book that is very, very popular is 7 Days in June. This is by Tia Williams. I read this book years back and really enjoyed it, and I feel like it's hard to find a book that has the amount of depth that this one does. This book feels like a classic to me. So the book that I'm going to share, I don't know if I would necessarily say it feels like a classic, but it definitely has the depth and the romance aspect together. And this one right here is actually in the contemporary fiction section, but it is like a true romance. It's about a woman who has been a writer. She's been absolutely in love with this guy for years, and she's been secretly writing about him, and he is also a writer as well, and he's been secretly writing about her, and they end up having to come to a head at this like writers conference. But they had this like wild 7 days together, and in those 7 days, that's when they like fell in love. And yeah, it's just like a really beautiful story. So this one right here, again, I feel like is a classic. And I don't know if I'd say that this one's a classic, but this one is definitely a book that is heavy on the romance, but also heavy on the subplots as well. And it is called Between Friends and Lovers by Shirley Abobi. This is about a girl who has been really struggling to decide if she wants to let go of a friendship that she's had in her life for a really long time. She's been interested in this guy for years, and kind of seems like he's stringing her along because it seems like he knows that he likes her or that she likes him. And so she decides like, maybe this isn't for me, I'm not really sure. While she's kind of trying to figure that whole situation out, she ends up meeting this other guy who is just like everything that you would want in a guy. Like he is just the sweetest ever. And she's like, do I want to invest in this other guy instead, or do I want to lean to this like guy that I've known for years? And you see that like dynamic of her trying to decide like what she wants to do, but also you see how she's navigating depression, which is something that is focused on in this book as well. And you also see how she is navigating having to deal with like her workspace because she's an influencer, but also she used to work in healthcare. There's just so many different themes within this book, and I feel like it would be great for a book club, which is why it makes me think of this one. Another book that reminds me of a Popular Book Talk book, and the popular Book Talk book is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And the other book I'm going to show you guys in a second, but this book right here is a book that is set in high school and something happens, and the main character of this book is trying to figure out like what happened because someone ends up dying. This was actually turned into like a movie or a TV show or something, and I thought it was good. I thought it was good, but I did think it could have been done better. And I think the book that actually like kind of does it, this book, but like 10 times better, is The Black Queen by Jumada Amil. This book right here is also about someone who dies at a school and no one really knows what happens, and you are on the edge of your seat this entire book. Like, you are just trying to figure out what's happening. You don't know like where, you know, things are coming from, like left and right things are being thrown at you. And the main character in this is like, I have to figure out what happened because it could affect people in my life if I don't. And both of these books are set in high school, and I feel like if you read a thriller that's set in a high school, it definitely has a different feel than like a traditional thriller like for adults. But I think that these are also great books if you're not like a young adult. I think you'd also really love them as well. This is just, it's such a great book. It also talks about race and that dynamic in a school setting. I think that it's such a great book. I also think if you enjoy the book Ace of Spades, I think that you would really like this book as well. Again, I've read all of these books, so I feel like I have a good grasp of like what each book's about and like the vibe. And I'm kind of thinking less storyline. I mean, there's obviously similar storylines, but more like the vibe and feel of the book. Because a lot of the storylines might be kind of similar, some might not. But I think it's hard to replicate a feeling in a book. And this book right here is one that definitely is very well known, and it's called It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I feel like everyone and their mom either knows what this story's about or has already read it. I think the thing that took this like whole book took the world by storm from this book is that it was super easy to read, and it kind of had the feeling of like keeping you on the edge of your seat because you didn't know what was going to happen next. And I also think that this was an interesting story because it is after Lily, the main character, has like just graduated from college, and so you don't see a lot of stories that are set in that time frame, like either college or like right after college. And it's obviously about a relationship. Now, these stories are not similar in any way, because I do think that having a story like this one maybe could have been done a little bit better and could have been written in a way like towards the ending that maybe doesn't glamorize having a relationship like that. But I do think that this book right here, Wait For You, is such a great story, and it's set in college. There's a big difference in the relationship. Like, you're not gonna get like a toxic relationship at all, but what you are gonna get is someone who's been through trauma, and it's about a girl who's in college and she kind of keeps to herself. She's just like, I don't wanna be around anyone. And she meets this guy who's like her next door neighbor, and he really tries to break down her walls. And he sees that she's been through so much, and he's like, I just can't like not be gravitated towards her. There's literally a point in this book where he like knocks on her door and she's like, I don't want to let anyone in, like I like need to like stay by myself. And he's like, I just want to make you eggs, that's all I want, I just want to make you breakfast, like everyone has to eat. And you see him break down her walls, and she has them so high up, so it definitely takes a lot of work. But I think the things that are very similar to me is this book is very easy to read. It also is set like in a college-ish setting, and this book was actually very popular when it first came out. And so if you're someone who's already heard of it, you might be like, that's not an underrated book. Like, it's actually like very highly rated because it's by Jennifer Lynn Armentrout, who is a very well-known author. But I do think that it's one of those books that is underrated in 2025. And there's gonna be another book like that where it was kind of like bigger in the like years past, but isn't something that people really read now. And fun fact, I actually started reading Colleen Hoover's books in 2013. The first book I read of hers was Hopeless, and really loved it. I remember passing it on to my friend. We were working together, and she was like, oh my God, this is so good. And like, obviously her books didn't really pop off until like 2020, 2021, like ish. So that's years and years later. And Jennifer Lynn Armentrout obviously has incredible books, but I feel like she's more known for like fantasy vibes than romance. And so I just picked this book up randomly, like I think 2 years ago or a year ago, and I was like, oh my God, there's so many reviews on this book. and so many people love it, but I just have not heard about it. And I think it's because it was like published years back. So I definitely think you should pick up this book if you're wanting like a college romance where someone has been through like some trauma, because you do definitely see the main character in this go through trauma, and it's like very hard to see. And this is obviously a different situation, but it kind of has a similar feel because she's working through that while still trying to open her heart to someone else. Another book that I think is a great thriller is The Housemaid. This is a very well-known thriller. I feel like so many people have read this, but there's another book that I think just really, I wouldn't say it's better, but I mean, kind of. Like, it is wild though. Like, I mean, you have to go into this other book with a different perspective because it's a little bit more gory. It kind of gives, it's not a horror, but I'm not someone who reads horror, but if someone told me that it was a horror book, I would believe them. Now, this book right here is called The Favorite Girl. I really love this book. The things that remind me the reason why it reminds me of The Housemaid is because The Housemaid is about a woman who is like really down on her luck. She doesn't have anywhere to go, so she ends up going to this house and being like a maid, and you see a bunch of stuff happen. And it just kind of like leaves your jaw on the floor. The Favorite Girl is so similar, but it's just like different things happen. The girl in The Favorite Girl, she goes to this, she sees this like newspaper ad where they're like looking for someone to come in and clean their house. So she's like, whatever, I'll come in there. She goes in there and starts seeing all these weird things. And she's like, maybe I should like get out of here. Maybe I should leave. But then she's like, well, where am I gonna go? I'm gonna literally have to go sleep on like a park bench because I don't have a place to live. So she kind of decides to stick it out, and that is where the similarities I think really tie in. It's also super fast paced, very easy to read. It also kind of looks like a Frida McFadden book. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen her recent published books. Like, they've all been like republished and they look a little bit different, and they're kind of like short and chunky, and that's how The Favorite Girl looks. Very big words. Every chapter you end, it makes you want to pick it up for the next chapter. So definitely pick it up if you haven't read it yet. Another really popular book that I think you will really love if you love this one, if you love this popular book, you will love this underrated one, is The Things We Never Got Over. Is a popular book. Obviously, so many people have read this one. I think the things that people loved about Things We Never Got Over is, I mean, she's a thick one. Like, she is very thick. But you do not get bored because this book has something happening every second, and very rarely do I, or most people I feel, enjoy a super thick and hearty romance, because sometimes it's like, okay, let's get it moving. Like, this is a little boring. Whereas like in a thriller or like some kind of fantasy, there's usually like other things happening that kind of keep the story like really, really interesting, and you stay on the edge of your seat. And that's a large part of, I think, of why people enjoyed this one. It's also set in a small town. It has like a band of characters that you kind of, you fall in love with all of them. And it's about a girl who, she's kind of running from something. She ends up going to this town. While she's there, she ends up falling for this guy. And it reminds me so much of this book I just finished. I haven't even done a like wrap up of it because I read it in February, but I had to add it into this video. It's called The World Around Us. I love this book so much. It gives me similar vibes because one, it's set in a small town. Two, there are a cast of characters in this book that will also get their own books. And there's actually another like sister series where some of the characters in this book have their own stories in those as well. You can read this as a complete standalone. You do not have to read the other books in the series at all because they're actually in a different town. This book, they're set, the story is set in Greer, and the other story is set in Beverly Mills. So like they're very similar towns but different. But in this story, it's about a girl who was kind of like, she leaves this town that she was in, and she ends up coming back to another town and starts to fall for this guy who's in this small town. It's one of those things that I feel like you will fall in love with because she goes through so much and the guy in this goes through so much, but you are never bored. It is a long book, but you are never bored. And I cannot say too much because I don't want to spoil anything, but if you enjoyed this book because there's always something happening, it's set in a small town, someone's kind of running from something and trying to figure out like what to do next, you will love this romance. The next book that I think gives very similar vibes, and one is kind of popular and the other is kind of popular. So one is popular as of like 2023, 2024, 2025. The other book is kind of like an older one, kind of like I was sharing before with the book by Jennifer Lynn Armentrout. So the popular book is Picking Daisies on Sundays. This book is a spice-free romance, and it is also set like in a college setting, and it's like really cutesy, very fun, nothing super heavy or hard that the characters have to work through. It's just pure fun, but very, very enjoyable. And I feel like a lot of the time when I read books that don't have like a huge like point of tension, I'm like, how am I supposed to enjoy this? But this book does have a point of tension and has like something that moves the plot along, but it's not like a hard thing the characters are going through. It's just pure fun. So if you're someone who's going through maybe a hard time right now, you just want like a cozy, cutesy read that's gonna put you in a good mood, definitely pick this one up. And even though this one doesn't have spice on page, it definitely has like moments of tension where you're gonna just feel all the feelings with this book. And another book that reminds me of that type of vibe is To Sir with Love. This is just sickeningly cute. I love this book so much. I also think that this one doesn't have spice, or if it does, it might be like Closed Door or something. Like, I don't think it has spice, but I've read it years ago. I think I read it like 4 years ago. But this is just a cutesy read, and Lauren Lane has lots of cutesy romances like this. I definitely want to pick up another one of her books soon. This is about a woman who has a champagne like flower shop, and she's been really loving being the store owner there. I think it was passed down like from her dad or something. And then this developer comes in and is like, hey, I want to buy this shop because I want to like develop the space. She's like, absolutely not. But she's really struggling to actually keep her doors open. While all this is going on, she's been trying to like date and do that kind of thing like online. She meets this guy that she's like really interested in, and they really hit it off. But they cannot seem to cross their paths to like actually meet in person, but they're really starting to have feelings for each other. So you're seeing her love life, but also seeing the things that she's trying to figure out with her work situation. It's just really cute. It's really, really cutesy. I feel like if you like a cutesy read that doesn't have anything too heavy, like her store's about to close, you know, it gives Hallmark vibes. Like if you like a Hallmark vibe, you should definitely read both of these books. Now this book was popular like years ago, and this one I'd say is more popular of like recent times. So you might not have heard about this one if you have read this one. Another book that is super popular is Love in Other Words. Now, this is my copy that I got from Taylor. It is truly one of the most cherished gifts that I've ever gotten in my entire life. She read this book and annotated it, so I'm gonna be reading this book again this year like I always do. I've read this book, I'm pretty sure 3 times. Yeah, I've literally read it 3 times, and I will continue to read it every single year. It is a 5-star read for me. One of my favorite reads and favorite books I've ever picked up. It's one of those books that I could read again and again and again, and I will never get tired of it. And it is such a great read. It is a second chance romance. It's about a couple who they like have this like whirlwind, beautiful, not even whirlwind, because I guess it was like over years like that they built their friendship, but they have this romance and then something pulls them apart. And there's so much just like heartache and tension. And it's like, why? They're so perfect. Like it is just, it's a great coming of age story because you see them like really grow up together. And this book, I genuinely didn't think I would find anything even remotely similar to this one until I read The X-Vows. Now this book is not Love in Other Words. Like it's not. I don't think anything can be what that book is, but it gives very similar vibes. It's a second chance romance. And this is about a girl who is going to help her best friend like get married, and her like old boyfriend happens to be there. Now this is where the second chance romance comes in, because the guy that is there helping her friend, like they used to have a relationship, and it was very similar where it was like they were each other's everything. Like they really thought that like this was gonna be it. And it is just so beautiful. The story just gives you all the ooey gooey feels. I feel like you'll really love this if you like the book Love in Other Words. And this one is by Jessica Joyce. And another book that I think is very popular is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. Now, I don't have this book on me because one of my friends is reading this book, which is also why The Favorite Girl was one book that I couldn't actually show. But again, I have read all of these books and love them. Before I Let Go is such a great romance. It's about a couple who they're divorced and they have kids, they have a business together, so they kind of have to like cohabitate and make things work, just like in life. Like they have to like get along. And then they kind of start to have feelings for each other and they're like, do we want to do this again? Like, I don't know, like I'm not really sure. And it's a second chance romance that I feel like is so beautiful, because not only do you see that, you also see them just try to work on themselves, because there was something that pulled them apart that is so sad. And I feel like if you like Before I Let Go, you will really love Love by You by Alexandria Lachelle. This book was a recent release, and this is by an author who is not super hyped up, but she deserves to be. The writing, like Kennedy Ryan's writing, feels poetic to me. Like it feels poetic, but not stuffy, not wordy. Like she's not writing words just for no reason. You know what I mean? There's some authors that I'm like, okay, you could have saved a couple sentences and just said what you said. Like I feel like Kennedy Ryan's writing is like all the words need to be there. It's just so poetic, it's so beautiful, and it reminds me so much of Alexandria Lachelle's writing as well. There's so much tension in this story. This again is a second chance romance, and it is about two people who are so madly in love and something pulled them apart. Something that is like actually so incredibly sad. And I think when I read Before I Let Go, a lot of the time I would read second chance romances and I'm like, okay, this doesn't really seem like a reason why you would like break up or like not want to get back together. But when I read Before I Let Go, I was like, oh yeah, I see why you guys struggled. And this book also gave me that same vibe. It's like, I see why you guys struggle to like even want to potentially make this happen again after that heartache. And so I really feel like you will love this one if you love tension, if you love slow burn, if you love poetic writing, if you love writing that's gonna really make you feel immersed in the story, and you love second chance romance, you have to pick this one up. And another book that I think is a great read is Icebreaker. Well, I don't know if I'd say Icebreaker's a great read, because I actually was one of the few people who wasn't obsessed with Icebreaker. I think it was a little long. I do think the story was fun, but like the first half. But then the last half was just like straight spice, and it just felt like there wasn't enough storyline, if that makes sense. But again, it was fun, you know, it wasn't terrible. Okay, well maybe it wasn't my favorite, okay? I'll just say that. And I do think there are a lot of things I loved about this story. I loved the found family in this story. I loved how you got to see a sports romance, and it was just like pure fun. Like they were just having fun. It was in college, and like the college vibes were hitting, because like, I mean, they were hooking up every other page. And this vibe from this story, I haven't really found something that replicated it until I read Our Secret Moments by Janisha Boswell. I rated this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. Loved every second of it. It's about a girl and a guy who, they're both in college. You also get the found family vibes because all of their best friends, they get their own books. And so I've already read book 2, and book 3 hasn't come out yet, but I really love how they include the characters. Similar to this one, it's like a lot of these characters get their own books, like on the hockey team. This is about a football team, and the captain of the football team, he's kind of like, not shy, but he's just like kind of quiet. And she has to interview him because she's on this newspaper that like interviews the football team, and he's just kind of like, I don't know, like if I'm gonna do well. So he kind of wants her to like coach him and like help him figure out how to do well on these interviews. So while they're doing that, they kind of start to have feelings for each other, but her best friend is his sister. So like they should be off limits to each other, but this book is definitely giving all the college vibes. There's college parties, like there's all the college things that you would want in a book. It also has spice, but it isn't like taking over the story. Like it's definitely there, and you can actually go to the front of the book and it'll tell you what parts have spice. And so if you want to skip over it, or if you just want to like dive right into it, you can. But it shows chapter 21, chapter 24, chapter 26, chapter 30, chapter 35, and chapter 40 all have spice. But again, you could skip over it if you want, or skip right to it. Love this book. Cannot wait to read more of the series when the next book comes out. This author has become one of my absolute favorite authors because it's just a book that's easy to read. I feel like this book would pop off on Book Talk if people would actually pick it up and read it. And it's very underrated. So please pick up this book. I love this book so much. And this was also in my top 10 reads of 2024. and it was like up there. It was like, I think number 4 or something like that. It was just pure fun. It was just fun. And I feel like we need more books like that. There wasn't anything too heavy. It was in college. It was just really fun. And then another book that I think is a great one, well, this book right here is a popular one, and there's another underrated one that's a great one, is Verity. I feel like this is a book that so many people were obsessed with as well, so I had to recommend something that's similar. And I think the thing that people really enjoyed about this book was it was a mix of a thriller but also had spice, which you don't really see very often in thrillers. I feel like with thrillers, it's usually heavy on the thriller, not much on the romance. This was like almost 50-50, it felt like. And it was one that I feel like so many people have read, so many people have raved about, but also it's a super easy read. Like, it's one of those that you do not want to put down, that you can't stop thinking about, that the ending leaves you being like, what actually happened? Like, you know, what's your thoughts on it? And I feel like there hasn't been a thriller like it since, until I read I think it's called The Final Scene. I actually have this book actually given to one of my friends as well. I recommend tons of thrillers to my friends at the gym, and like they have a bunch of my thrillers, and I actually have to bring another one to them tomorrow. They love the books that I bring, but it just makes it so that a lot of them are on my shelf, which is fine because I've already read it, but I love this book so much. It was one of my favorite thrillers of the year, one of my top thrillers of 2024. And this one is about a girl who was kidnapped, and she was kidnapped years past. And then whenever she's like in this cabin where she's been kidnapped, someone else is also kidnapped. And they're like, okay, we gotta get out of here. She's like, no, like it's not happening. Like, I've been here for years. Like, we're never getting out of here. And that person kind of encourages her to maybe think differently and realize like maybe we could get out if we really try. Like, you don't have to be held captive for the rest of your life. But they're like in the middle of the woods. With that, and it is such a weird concept, with that you're getting spice, you're getting people hooking up, you're getting, I mean, it is a interesting, wild thriller that will have you on the edge of your seat. It's also super easy to read. It reminds me a lot of Verity in that way, where it's one of those thrillers that I think is perfect for new readers, and I feel like it's also why a lot of people gravitate towards Verity. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and got lots of book recommendations. Comment below a book that you absolutely loved, and if I have a recommendation, I will share it. If I don't, I mean, like, we can still talk about books that we love, but I would love to give you recommendations based on books that you loved, because I've read so many books. Like, I read 175 books last year, and the year before that I read 170 books. So I'm a big reader. I read like a ton of books every single month. So I would love to give you recommendations for books that you've read and books that you loved. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.